assuming uniform cash flow during the year. We're just, I mean, at the end of year two, we still had 15,000 to recover. But during year three, I'm getting 40. So I'm going to basically get the prorated portion of year three and add it to two. In our calculations, I'm going to produce two aids for ourselves. One, I want my spreadsheet to tell me in, in what year do I get to the black. Not only that year's running cash flow is non-negative, but the previous years was negative. And I'm going to do this with a conditional formatting. This is simply a visual aid. You don't even have to scan it because eyes can deceive you. Did you guys know that in criminal trials, typically the least reliable evidence is eyewitness testimony? Because the way people recollect things can be faulty. Home, conditional formatting, new rule. I'm going to say use a formula to determine which cells to format. So I'm going to write a formula that's a logical statement. If that returns true, it's going to format that cell the way I want it. Okay. Otherwise, it's going to leave it as it is. And I want two things. So I'm going to use the end function. The end function can have multiple arguments. It returns true if all of those arguments are true. If even only one of them is false, it returns false. And in case you wonder, there's just an OR function. It returns true if one of the arguments is true. It returns false only if all of the arguments are false. In this case, I want two things. Actually, let me do it from here because I'm going to copy and paste formulas, formats. New rule. And what is and? One of the ends is the current row. Since I'm going to copy this, I'm going to get rid of the dollar signs. Unfortunately, I cannot zoom that. It doesn't allow me. I want the previous cell, $8 actually, not AHD, AND. I want the previous cell to be negative. And I want the current cell to be greater than or equal to 0. If and when that happens, I want my cell to be bold italic, font color ivory, and I want the fill to be black. I'm in the black. Okay, and I'm going to copy, select all of them, right click, paste the formats. Just like we expected, it tells me that I'm going to be in the black sometime during year three. If I change some of the numbers, for example, this thing is going to cost me 100,000. It automatically tells me that it's going to happen in year four. All right. Now, in terms of payback calculations, I'm going to do two things. Payback year. Let's call this regular payback year. I'm going to actually make that into an input. I can even determine that using a formula, but I don't want to get into that. I also want you to be physically aware that that's the year. So you're gonna, in this case, I'm gonna have to enter 4, right? I made it green background to let you know that it is indeed a input. And I'm gonna calculate 2 things: deficit or beginning deficit, uh, cash during. I mean, in this case, I can visually see that I had $5,000 deficit at the beginning of year 4. But as numbers change, I don't want to do that by hand. I want an Excel formula to get that for me. For that, I'm going to use an Excel function called VLOOKUP. As the name suggests, it does a lookup on something. The V is short for vertical. So I'm going to give this function a table. It's going to do a lookup in the first column of that table of a number that I'm going to tell to. In this case, it's going to look up for 3. And once it finds a match, it's going to grab a number from a certain column that I'm going to designate. And on any function, if you put the parentheses in, if you hit Control A, this little dialog box comes in. If you already know the syntax of the function, you don't have to do it. But this is kind of a visual help. What am I looking for? The payback year minus 1. If I'm on the black on year 4, right now I'm looking for what the deficit was at the end of year 3. What am I going to look? Well, I'm going to look in this table. If I find a match, which column do I need to get? Well, I need to get the 4th column. 1, 2, 3, 4. Technically speaking, the last argument is optional. If you leave it blank, it doesn't necessarily, if there's an exact match, it gives you the exact match. But if there is no exact match, it finds you the approximate match. That is not something I want. Because if it cannot find an exact match, I want this thing to give me a error message, which means uh, it's just an error message. So you type a false, and I want this number to be red. Of course, I want that to be $sign, okay? And I also want the cash during, and I'm gonna do this. I'm looking for now how much cash I am getting this year, the 4th year. Where am I gonna look that up? I'm gonna look that up here. Once I find a match, I'm gonna grab the 2nd column and I'm gonna do false. Again, I want this thing to be black. Even bold. So if I change this back to 70,000, not 770, and payback now happens in year 3. As soon as I enter the year payback period, it automatically grabs them for me. Now all I have to do is calculate the payback period. I'm gonna start with payback year minus 1. So 2 years plus something, right? And in fact, I'm gonna put a minus because the deficit, I entered that as a minus. Divide that by cash. So 15,000 is 38% of 40, right? And let's make this, let me see.